See. All right, this is a Light in the Darkness podcast. Today's guest is William Ramsey. He is the author of Abomination, Prophet of Evil, and Children of the Beast. He is the director of the Smiley Face Killers and Occult Hollywood Volume 1, and recently released Volume 2 onto Vimeo that's available to rent or to buy. And how you doing, William?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, just for the guests, if you could just give a little background of yourself and just basic rundown.
Sure. I think that I was always kind of interested in I was willing to look into alternate history, alternate views of things, and kind of led me to question a lot of mass media and governmental statements, and really kind of I was a researcher into 9/11, very independent, and all the numerology of the date of September 11th, 2001 led me back to Aleister Crowley. So I really became a person who wanted to see who this person was, not what other people were telling me, but really kind of delve deep into his biographies, into his own personal writings, and really try to get the gist of who this person was. And then once I did that, I was pretty shocked to see how many people spinned or deflected some of the truths about Aleister Crowley. So I was intent on exposing those. I wrote my first book, Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order. I think 2010, 2011 it was published. And then I wrote a book after finding out the kind of Crowley influence upon a very important true crime case that a lot of people know about, the West Memphis 3. I wrote Abomination, Devil Worship, and Deception in the West Memphis 3 murders. I also traced the impact of Crowley upon 20th century history and culture in my book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow over Humanity, because his influence was much more vast, I think, than the average person realizes or comprehends. So that I think I was kind of the attempt of that book. And then I became a student of this, what was known as the Smiley Face Killers. I was curious about it, and I really read everything I could and came up with a 3.5-hour documentary titled The Smiley Face Killers, who was abducting, torturing, and murdering college-age men in the U.S. and U.K., this kind of global phenomenon of young men disappearing at night, being found in water, oftentimes much later than when they should have been found. And so there was a lot of mystery and confusion surrounding that, so I tried to shed some light on that. And then also Occult Hollywood was like something I had done in 2010, kind of as an exercise. It was an early documentary, so I just re-edited it, a lot of that information, and came out with Occult Hollywood, I think last month or 2 months ago. And so that's volume 2, and that's available on Vimeo. So that's kind of like my work, my background. I have a BA in history. I have a JD. I'm a member, inactive member of the State Bar of California. And I was really just a person who was frustrated with the glaring omissions of the corporate media and the mass media in the country. So really that's what kind of incentivized me or wanted me to actually put out things I thought were important. So I spent a lot of time, like during the 2016 election, trying to expose how physically sick Hillary Clinton was. That's on my YouTube channel, William Ramsey Investigates. And I've been doing a lot of recent podcasts on a variety of subjects, mostly true crime. And that's on my podcast, William Ramsey Investigates. So that's kind of like a long recitation of what I've been up to.
No, that's good. It's thorough. So just for people, because I know a lot of people listening to this might already be familiar with Crowley, but what would be like for somebody that's just listening to this that, they might have heard of him, kind of like a Sparks Notes of who this man was?
I think I had that same kind of impression of Crowley. I'd heard the song Mr. Crowley from Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know if this person was influential. But he was born in 1875. He died in 1947. And he was really the only son from a group of Plymouth Brethren. They were followers of Darby, this kind of dispensationalist. So he was actually part of his family was part of the Exclusive Brethren, which was a subset of Darby. And he rebelled against his parents. His father died when he was 12. He was very wealthy for that time, so he was a member of their upper class. He was sent to boarding schools, the best schools that London had to offer. And at a certain point, he said, I didn't want to just get to no, Satan, I wanted to become his chief of staff. So he really dedicated his life to three subjects, at least when he was younger, which was occultism, or magic with a K, mountaineering, and poetry. So he thought of himself as literature. But I think the importance in some of Crowley was really his kind of a new age approach of the man as God in a very general sense, in that you can do whatever you want. His dictum was, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law, an 11 syllable, 11 word statement. 11 was really kind of his primary number. That's the number of magic. 5 and the 6, the macrocosm, and the microcosm come in 11. That's why 11s are so suffused within occultism. But I think that's really the gist of what Crowley, and he started his own religion based upon a book he received in Egypt in 1904 he called it the Book of the Law, which references the Book of the Law in Masonic practice. And he received that book from a being he called Awaz, which later he explained that as Lucifer or Satan. So this kind of entity was really kind of the foundation of his religion, that he kind of drafted out with all kinds of ritual practice and things like that he had learned from the Masons, from the Golden Dawn, which was a magical fraternity, and the OTO, which he became the head of a group called the Ordo Templi Orientis, an actual German secret society, and became its head in 1925 until 1947. So really, I think really that's kind of the general overview of Crowley.
Yeah, and then he had ties to MI5, right? Or
Right.
like
So
spying, espionage, and
absolutely. So I think before what happened in Britain is they broke their intelligence services into the local ones. The UK is MI5, and then international is MI6. But before that, there was something called the Secret Intelligence Service, which Crowley was a part of, and probably worked for intelligence in Britain till he was dead. But primarily, he was involved in making sure the U.S. did not go to war, making sure the U.S. went to war with Germany while he was in New York from about 1913 to 1917. And then also he was spying on Mussolini when the Black Shirts took over the government in Rome. So he was in.
And did he have his abbey at that time?
Yeah, well, right around that time, correct. So his Abbey of Thelema was in Sicily at Cefalù from, I think, a function between roughly 1920 to 1924, before he was kicked out. So he was kicked out of kicked out of Italy, kicked out of France for espionage and occultism.
Okay, yeah, and that's is there really any what caused him to become involved with the intelligence services?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think that a lot of these intelligence services recruited from the best colleges in the UK, of which Cambridge and Oxford are probably the top. And so that's where he was at school, was at Cambridge. And he was probably recruited right from the beginning because he had this kind of traveling troupe of women that went to Russia in like 1904, 1903. There were a lot of things happening in Russia at that time. I think the first Duma was around that time. So he seemed to be spying. Actually, he integrated what he saw from Orthodox Christianity in Russia into his religion, because he liked all of the
liturgical kind of, ceremony and
exactly the liturgy, the ceremony, the style, the ornate.
You can see that from the pictures I've seen of it's like a Gnostic Mass, I think he called it.
Yep, the Gnostic Mass, he said, was taken from an Orthodox ceremony that he saw. So he did. I mean, he traveled. So he really, in a very rare time, he circumnavigated the globe twice, and so he was able to. He never actually had what we would call a standard 9-to-5 job. He never worked. So he used.
So he was what would be today like a trust fund baby. Or
exactly. That's exactly.
Okay.
So he was able to do mountaineering expeditions in India, back when India was a colony of England. He went to China. He went to modern day Vietnam, which was named differently. He came through San Francisco, spent time in the U.S., traveled through the United States. So he he saw just much of the world at a time when not too many people had that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah.
And he actually brought back a lot of information from the East. So he tried to integrate this kind of Eastern religious ideas of yoga and Hinduism and the
And
I
what
Ching China into his religion.
and what time period was this?
Well, he died in 1947, but when he was traveling around the world, he was very
Yeah.
young. He was probably in his late 20s. He received the
So
Book of the Law in 1904 when he was 29 in Egypt on his way back from a trip.
so I could imagine this is why it was so appealing to people. Is he was, because today we have, we're exposed to everything. We can see every religion, but at that time he was, bringing things back to England that people probably had no idea about, like
I would
religious
agree.
practices, very exotic.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. So he knew all of these kind of spiritual states that the Hindus and yoga, people, what's the word, like gurus used to know. So he
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
referenced himself as a guru. So he had all these words and terms that were just being exposed to the Western world probably in the late 19th century due to the ability of people to really travel around. So he was definitely
So in a
part of
sense,
that.
he was very intelligent.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
and like scholarly in
intelligent,
like a
yeah,
lot of his approach to.
yes. I think one researcher said that he almost had kind of like a Protestant work ethic as a Satanist. And that's kind of what distinguished him, is because he was constantly putting out material. I mean, his corpus has never really been assembled by any of even the people who really admire Crowley, has never really been assembled and put in one book or anything, because he was also a journalist at the time. So he wasn't just creating a religion, he was writing poetry and writing for publications like Vanity Fair, writing fiction. So he was always, that was kind of what his, the purpose, the way that he purposed his life.
Yeah, and then so he travels the world, is involved with spying, and then how does he eventually tie in where he becomes such a prominent influence in America in like the Hollywood movie scene?
Well, that's a long drawn out question. I think that people had a kind of a idealized view of Crowley and saw him as a liberator of the human spirit, and also he was into kind of free love and also drug use. So I think that when the 60s rolled around and that there were newer gurus, particularly Timothy Leary and some of these other people, they referenced Crowley. Tim Leary himself thought that he had kind of like a past life connection to Crowley. I think he called it he had a synchronous life like Crowley's. They were in the same place in Algeria, Busada. So I think that was carrying. He actually said in a kind of an infamous video interview that he was carrying on the work of Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley himself wanted to create a religion that would. He was very ambitious. He wanted to create a religion that would really take over the world and crush really his idea of Christianity. And he called it the birth of the child. He thought it was going to take place in the 60s. So in some ways you can interpret this social change, cataclysmic social change that happened in the 60s as something influenced by Aleister Crowley.
And on that, like, what would do you know what his views were on like Islam and?
Yeah, I mean, he actually had kind of strange positive views of Islam. He used kind of he referenced Islamic faith. He was an admirer of Muhammad. He really had a lot of his venom was mostly for Christianity. So he wrote a bunch of nasty tracts. The World's Tragedy was the title of a book. The tragedy is Christ. So in that book, like Crowley is going to take Christ's place. So he had very, like I said, very ambitious aims. I don't think they were ever realized, but yeah. So I think that he had sympathies and he took and picked and chose certain things from all of these different doctrines, primarily from Eastern religion, not so much, as far as I know, from Islam. Although he called some of his religion like a Qibla or a Kaaba, like you're supposed to face that, kind of like current Muslims face Mecca. So there is
Yeah.
references, and there's references in of concepts and ideas from Muslim religion in the Book of the Law.
Okay. Okay. And then a lot of people might say, just like how you were saying, they interpret you know how you kind of have Levian Satanism, where they're saying it's more of like a Nietzschean, like philosophical.
Right. There's no real entity.
Yeah, but Crowley wasn't that. He
No.
did. He believed like a
No,
deity that's objectively like a spirit that is Satan.
correct. I
Okay.
don't think there's any question. When he said that he was writing the Book of the Law in April of 1914, there was a being over his shoulder that was dictating this to him. So it's really a received book. And then he called it Iwas, but he also throughout his writings, he's praying to Iwas. He's searching for Awas, this being A-I-W-A-Z, this Lord of the Air, which Christians can reference or recognize that phrase.
Yeah, yeah.
So so he's talking about that, and he just basically admits that I was a Satan in kind of not a real, but in a key paragraph in one of his writings. Like he acknowledges that Awaz is Satan and Lucifer. So,
And there's interesting parallels between him and Muhammad when he received the Quran.
Right, absolutely, I totally agree. So, you can see the Quran as a received book. You can see the Book of the Law as a received book. You can see the Book of Mormon as a received book. That these all come from some kind of other plane through automatic writing or things like that. I was talking to an earlier interviewer a couple of weeks ago about Marianne Williamson's book, A Course in Miracles, and she's literally trying to run for president based upon a book that was received, received by some entity. So it's not.
Oh,
It's
really? I
much more
didn't know.
present.
I've heard of
Yeah.
that, but I didn't know that was.
Oh, that's right. It's much more present than people were willing to acknowledge. Yeah. She's a New Ager, so she
Yeah.
a lot of these same kind of doctrines.
Okay. So yeah. So then you were saying like Timothy Leary, that the '60s, the like sex, drugs, rock and roll,
Right.
and so a lot of those prominent people were directly influenced by the
Absolutely.
writings of Crowley.
No question. Knew of them. The Rolling Stones, the Led Zeppelin. Many of them had really
Direct references.
Yeah, the Doors had an album. On the back of it is a bust of Crowley. Jim Morrison's over that. There's talks about the Rose of Mysterious Union, like blood rituals, which Crowley was involved in, blood drinking. The Cakes of Light are like, yeah, they're basically
Yeah.
human.
Very vile.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a strong part of the 60s, which I think, and even the homosexual gay rights movement, Harry Hay used to play the piano or the organ at AOTO rituals here in Hollywood in Los Angeles. So
Yeah, and it's just fascinating. That's what gets, watching your movie. It's just like it gets your head spinning because regardless of how you approach, like this type of topic or religious beliefs, I mean, the connections are there.
no doubt, there's
And
no doubt.
and what you do with those connections, that's up to your worldview. But you can't deny that like all these people knew each other. All of them have very strange like what shocked me was like Kinsey. I never heard of Alfred Kinsey.
Yeah. Right.
And
So Kinsey and Anger are friends. Kenneth Anger, he
yeah, and how
associated with
Kinsey
the
was almost promoting pedophilia.
Oh, I think that at the end of his so-called pseudoscientific research, it's not really scientific, it's pseudoscientific. His general outlook was the same as the Satanists. You can do whatever you want. Sex with anybody, sex with anything, at any time is permitted, and that's basically Crowley's same outlook. So,
Yeah, and that type of like Crowley was a pure like occultist, but then how it seems like in the '60s they were then trying to justify all these mystical things scientifically,
I agree with that.
like
Yes.
esoteric, and I guess you would even see it today with a lot of quantum physics. Like they're bordering on saying like, oh, there's a spirit world, but they're like, oh, there is no God though.
Right. So there's a spirit world of quantum mechanics that are out of the human eye, but yeah.
It's not a spirit world, it's just a different plane of existence, and there can be infinite worlds alongside of us. And it's like, well, that sounds a lot like you're admitting there can be other spiritual realities.
Sounds like it to me.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, to get back, so you had that whole time period of like anger and how he was I mean, I don't know what his sexuality was, but it seems
A
like,
homosexual.
okay, yeah, it seems very much like he was promoting like a very, what would you call it? Like Oscar Wilde, you know, where you have this very like hedonistic lifestyle.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that for sure.
And yeah, no, and it just seems like that whole time period, it exploded. You know, you had like the 50s, which, you know, probably had its own issues, but it just exploded. I mean, would you attribute a lot of that sexual revolution that came out, a lot of it to Crowley?
I think that he was an important component. I don't know the
If he's a
totality.
soul, okay.
Yeah, but I do think that there was social engineering taking place by the government. Leary himself could have been a lot like Crowley in that he's a government agent. You know, his connections to the CIA, his connections to Aldous Huxley, I cover in my book, Children of the Beast. So, and Huxley, I think Huxley wrote a book called Do What You Will or something like that. So very similar Crowley ideologies. So he seemed to be
Yeah, and the doors of perception, I think, and that's where
right.
the doors got, yeah.
Well, the actual word psychedelic was coined by Huxley. So
Oh, okay, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
so
Okay.
a lot of these words, terms, and stuff came out of the '60s by people who knew Crowley. So this same they would the Satanists or the occultists would call it a current. So there's like a band called Night Currents in '93. So they could call it a current of Crowley's teachings suffuses the culture, and probably, you know, it really kind of bounced up in the '60s, and people went through it and they got done. Like, what happened? It didn't really stick, although the '70s had its own, you know, hedonism, but I don't think it was as philosophically tied as much to magical or new age
Yeah.
as is the '60s. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just more of like a decadence of like,
Yes, I think so.
yeah, and it's interesting because in that whole time period too, you have the CIA. That's just there's a thread of them running through so much
Absolutely.
that you can. I mean, it's almost like are they? I almost feel like they're almost promoters of this type of occultism.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, you get into it very different. I think that when, like, even when the first question of our discussion is Crowley and the intelligence. So, how many of
Yeah,
these intelligence agents are occultists? If you look at the founding of the CIA, when there's a picture of Truman signing the National Security Act, which created the CIA, and behind him, half the people are members of Skull and Bones. You know, and so Skull and Bones guys are doing rituals. They're Illuminists, possibly even part of the Illuminati, dictating this thing where they can actually feed off the American person and do whatever they want. And then the 50s come and the CIA is involved in everything. Government overthrow, literally overthrowing
yeah,
governments all around the world, subverting them, taking a lot of money. There was usually a significant financial incentive in any of one of these governmental overthrows in whether it's Central America, Iran, these other countries. And then they overthrew the country in 1963 by killing our own president, November 22nd, 1963, which is an interesting date because that's also when Huxley died. So Huxley, John F. Kennedy, and C.S. Lewis all died on the same day.
yeah. I remember hearing that. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah, and that and what did I
so,
say?
here's
No, I'm sorry.
one way to look at it. Look at it this way, Nick. So you could see these occultists in the CIA fulfilling this New World Order objective by subverting, not necessarily overt, but overthrowing these governments, all in the interest of solidifying this New World Order objectives. Because you don't know how many of these other countries have heads who are actually highly CIA influenced by the CIA or owned by the CIA. You don't know. Back in
Yeah,
those,
and that
yeah.
and I. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, when they put the Shah of Iran in after they kicked out Mossadegh, he was basically, you know, his whole thing is secret intelligence was all set up by the U.S. So he was kind of became a puppet, and then British oil and everybody kept their financial interests. So, what other countries is that like? How many of the countries can you list and go through that during that time? You know, these guys really had an interest, particularly in Central America. I think that was much more common. But the same kind of thing happened in Chile. The Chilean overthrow of a left-wing government of Allende, of all things, was, you know, engineered by a lot of these same people. I wish I could remember the date, 71. But the overthrow of him took place on September 11th.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah, you
it's
can't make it
just
up. Yeah, you can't make it up. So, you know, yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. So the double helix of occultism and espionage or intelligence, goes back to Crowley and probably even before him. I mean, if you look at some of these early followers of the queens of England that we know of, particularly in France as well, they usually had these guys who were like both occultists, poisoners, and fixers. So
Yeah, and that almost to me ties back to the assassins in the Middle
yes,
East. I
yeah.
forgot you say it, Hashashin. I can't say it.
Well, I think it was the Hassashin because it's based on
Hassashins,
hash,
yeah.
something like that. But it's interesting because I referenced that in this Donald Campbell movie
Yeah.
performance where they reference that they're talking about nothing is true, everything is permitted during this initiation sequence where they're initiating this guy into their kind of Mick Jagger's Illuminate, initiating this guy using this term. So,
And how that group was very, I mean, because you hear of other groups like the OTO, and they're not as, you don't see them as like a military power or like a group to be reckoned with. But it seemed like the assassins were a mixture of an occult group and the Taliban.
yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
So they had like this. I mean, from what I understand, I guess the Crusaders they're afraid of them.
Right. So I mean, what in the modern world is like that? Is it the process church have those ideas? I know that
Exactly. Yeah.
Burroughs talked about that stuff. Nothing is true, everything is permitted, which is almost like a corollary to do what thou wilt, right? If everything is
Yeah, and I
permitted, do
almost
what you want. It's almost the same meaning, I think.
yeah, and I almost see like this like a correlation between like it gets confusing because you know that there's probably people involved with this. Like the CIA, maybe as an institution itself, it wasn't created to be in an occult group, but it's been infiltrated by occultists.
Well, I mean, if you look at a lot, I would make that's a great point. How many of these people from Skull and Bones are involved? How many Masons? How many people want to go? I mean, look at George Bush Sr. is making all kinds of New World Order speeches 11 years before 9/11, talking about a New World Order. And this is a guy who came out of Skull and Bones, Yale, super elite, a very, almost kind of like an American Caesar in a lot of ways because George Bush Sr. was involved in so many events in our modern history. Whether
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
go back to you can go back, I mean, you don't know the totality of it, but you can go back to Kennedy's death, the shooting of Ronald Reagan, who's the chief beneficiary. You can go back to the installation of the sun. You can go to that speech at the United Nations, and I show in my documentary these. I mean, these there's a correlation between the architecture of the UN, the Georgia Guidestones, and this obelisk or monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's not by mistake.
yeah, and that's what's shocking about it is because I guess that people would have a hard time like believing like this is, but it's all these coincidences put together.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
that's what I would encourage people to do too is don't take anything anybody says off face value, but just look at it, and
Right. Well, you don't have to
what
believe anything I said, but
yeah.
what's scary is that there are networked groups who are clearly sharing information that's not public. And I think that that's what happened in the West Memphis Three too, is that people who are networked talked to one another and tried to make a change in the world by getting these three guys out of jail. So I mean, these things do happen, and I think that people are naive to think that secrets aren't kept.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I
Myself.
mean, you see that with any time you get like a big power structure institution, they're gonna. I mean, you see with the Catholic Church what's going on.
Absolutely, a great point. Look at the CIA. I think you sign like all kinds of non-disclosure agreements. You get fired for telling the truth. So the whole thing. I've done these studies, these recent books on CIA mind control experiments in California. So it was 3 books: Chaos by Tim O'Neill, Lisa Peace's book about Sirhan Sirhan, and Donald DeFreeze, a book, Schreiber was his name. But all these guys are like being experimented on in California penitentiaries. It's crazy. So, yeah, yeah, it's just the strange things happen that don't make it to the public, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of it isn't like it's something that like how we're talking about it here. It's like there's all these like facts and evidence, but it doesn't have a nice, tidy conclusion.
Right,
So I
right.
don't think people really want, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Like,
Yeah, and I
it's not
think that's,
explicable. You don't know how that came to be. Yeah, absolutely.
and I think, but it's still important because, the only way people, connect the dots is if this information shared with people.
Right. Well, I think that once it gets shared, you learn from different sources, and then it becomes more accepted once you learn that information. So I think that just the sharing or the edification, even like my interviews for the books, because once you start seeing these same similarities between these killers or these assassinations or these weird social engineering events, you see that there's got to be a hand behind it because you see the same kind of blueprints.
Yeah, just the thread of it just nothing adds up a lot of times too. Like with the JFK, just to lightly touch on that. I mean, with like the magic bullet theory and just
Yeah.
and
But here's the thing: is the mind control aspect of the JFK. A lot of people don't go into. They're just telling you what it is. It is your 3 shots, the magic bullet. Believe it, right? They want you to believe it so bad. How many of these other events? Look at Epstein. He was on a bunk bed and committed suicide. They just tell you that over and over on the news. So, okay.
yeah, I mean,
It's,
I almost catch myself almost just accepting it.
yeah,
you know,
they keep telling this talking point of being a bunk bed, but I'm looking at who's in a special housing unit of the Metropolitan Correctional Center that has beds that are about 8 inches off the ground. There's no bunk beds in there. So why are
yeah,
they
and I think they're
keeping?
made of concrete. They're
Yeah.
built into the.
Yes.
It's not like a metal frame with
No.
bars, it's
No.
specifically so they don't hang themselves. They don't have a.
Oh yeah, that whole story does not add up. So, these events are still happening. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and that's there's so many different avenues to go on, but I guess bringing it, so you had Crowley's influence throughout the 60s leading on into the 70s. And I'm not too sure about the 80s and 90s, but I know even today
Yes.
with I think Jay-Z has,
Yes.
wears shirts that say do what thou wilt, and the signs they're making, and it's been attributed to them already, but it almost is a joke.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
they embrace it, they're like, oh, Illuma, and I think it's almost deception by just making like they're trying to make fun of it, so it just becomes like, oh, that's just that's a
Right,
kooky.
but it's also a culture of creation, in my opinion. I think that they might laugh it off, but they're actually putting it out there for as kind of like carrot for people who are interested in going that route. I think that that's why it's there.
Yeah,
People,
and it's
so not
especially.
everybody, right? So not everybody inquires. You and I may inquire and look at that and go, "Wow, this is black magic," but some other people may look at it and go, "Oh, how do I get involved in this? How
Yeah,
do
this is
I find
how
out?"
they became successful, so why
Right?
wouldn't I seek
Yeah.
this out?
Yes.
And I mean, and that's the going back, that's the other concerning thing is like, you have, I would say, around the time of the sexual revolution, you kind of had Christianity lose its influence in popular culture.
I would agree. I would say that almost the '60s was a supplantation of American Christian ethos in a lot of ways, and there was a rebellion against that. So I think that almost all those leaders of the counterculture were creating a counterculture. I think it was accurately described as a counterculture. It was a counterculture of the '50s, right? So blow up the nuclear family, sexual licentiousness, drugs, new forms of music, Eastern religion. It's all there. All that stuff is right out of Crowley. Not necessarily directly from Crowley, but it's the same kind of playbook.
Yeah, just pure subversion.
Yes.
And that's like the
Subversion,
concerning. Oh, I'm sorry.
subversion and replacement.
Yeah, and then once you cut the legs off of basically Christianity, I mean, we're left like you said, like with somebody with the way musicians promote, Jay-Z with Crowley. I mean, there's really no strong alternative standing there saying like, no, this is wicked stuff. That's on the pop culture level.
Agreed. I mean, where in the pop? Where do you see somebody who's a Christian in the
Oh
pop
yeah,
culture? It doesn't exist.
And that's, I mean, even with
Empty, yeah.
like Chris Pratt, like
There's
the
one, right?
yeah, but even him, I mean, I'm not saying he's divorced, but regardless, I won't judge him on the divorce. What I will judge him on is when he was sticking up for James Gunn.
Yeah, bad. Yeah.
And that, it's not, I think that when that's your job, you just kind of maybe have to fall in line sometimes.
Don't you think? Don't you think there's all kinds of hidden right wingers or Christians in Hollywood that just have to keep their mouth shut to get a job?
That's hard. Like you think
Yeah.
about that, is that they were probably coming up in Hollywood at a time that it wasn't as politicized as it is now. I mean, and overtly satanic.
True.
And then today, now you're left with, all right, I built my whole life on this trade, this skill. I can't just leave it.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I've had this conversation with other people. How do people, if that's their desire to reach the Hollywood mountaintop, what compromises do you have to make to get there?
Yeah, and that's I'm not in Hollywood, so that's
I'm not either.
yeah, and that's the crazy part is like you have to wonder about those things, because I've even like talked to my wife about like I would never wish that on my child to to be
Hey,
an
man,
actor.
you should see how many people come out the other side of Hollywood that are drug addicts,
Just
mental
nuts. It's
cases,
insanity.
if they survive, if they literally survive, because not all of them, dude. There's tons of abuse. It's tons of pedophilia. You only hear 10% of the stories. It's just it's a horror show what goes on behind the scenes. I mean,
And just to touch on that, I mean, like I know this is nobody has the answer, but why do you think pedophilia is so prevalent?
in Hollywood, because it's
Yeah.
to do with that world culture. That's what people
Okay.
go to Hollywood. I think that's the attraction. I want to go get power in Hollywood. I want to change the culture. I want to do what I want. So that's why you see all kinds of sexual strangeness there. There's all kinds of stuff under the surface that never makes it to the light of day. But yeah, Hollywood's a very dark place in general. If I was a Christian trying to make movies or music, I wouldn't even touch foot there, man. It's not a place for you.
Yeah, because it just seems like it. Yeah, it
Well,
would attract.
there's a lot of initiation. There's a lot of people get ahead by compromising themselves. There's a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff. A lot of strange
And
people.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and people listen might think that like, oh, this is conspiracy, or this is
Oh,
it's not that bad, but I mean, you just have to look at just you can watch TMZ videos, and those are the most uninformative, but you'll just see how nuts it's just a constant.
look at Michael Jackson. Look at all these big names. I mean, Michael Jackson probably was a serial predator. He only got caught for a few people, but I bet he's paying off tons of people. And I bet a lot of those people who denied that something happened are lying. That would be my opinion. So everyone who says, "Oh yeah, nothing happened," are lying. They probably got paid off.
Or yeah, or a lot of times when people are faced with that type of horror, it's better, they feel it's easier just to be in denial.
Absolutely, that's the same in the Catholic Church. It's the same in all these other places. It's not a lot of that sex abuse is not focused merely on the Catholic Church. It's a lot of Protestant denominations as well. They
Oh
just keep their
yeah,
mouth
that's
shut.
it. Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, all the
And
wrong places. So
yeah, and I think something I've struggled with too is like thinking, okay, like somebody would blow the whistle, somebody would,
no.
just numerous different topics, but then don't underestimate people's ability to just ignore things
Right, but
if
if
they're
you're
not
part of that
directly
culture,
involved.
do you know what whistleblowers get in Hollywood if somebody's on a set and say something goes wrong? They get blackballed. They're done. Dunzo. No more jobs. You see something bad happen, you're a set designer, just keep your mouth shut and hopefully you'll get paid, get more work. That's the way it really works.
And
Most
I think it's
everybody, yeah,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
just saying. I mean, that's why so many people kept quiet about Weinstein and all these other abuses is just
And
because
that's one thing I've seen where it's really enlightened me. is like with Dershowitz, is that the legal system, they'll kill you with the legal system.
Yes.
And that Hollywood has the most money. So the more money that's consolidated, you're just going to get killed in like litigation or paperwork, or, I don't know much about law, but
Settlements. There's a guy there, Marty Singer, is their kind of go-to person to arrange things, settlements, stuff like that. I bet he has the most amazing files that nobody's ever seen. No gossip columnist, no nothing, because a lot of the stuff just gets settled. There's agreements. Somebody talks. I was thinking just the other day about the Jeff Bezos pictures. Do you remember that? Do you remember that story where somebody had his pictures that he was sending to his girlfriend, and that's why so that came out. He called Marty Singer and David Boies and another guy whose name I can't remember. Do you remember what happened to that story? It disappeared. That story was taken off of everything. And
it was huge for like a week.
Week and gone, dude.
Where they're like, oh, he's going to have to pay half his fortune to this woman. And then, you're right. I never thought about that.
That shows the power.
And that's exactly what they want.
Exactly. Right behind the scenes. So all that stuff's done. Nobody fights against that. There were probably some kind of beneath the surface arrangements done, but that's the way it all works with guys with a lot of money, and Bezos has the most. So
yeah, well, I know it's getting around 4:00. You were saying you have another obligation.
Somebody's supposed to come here, and I'm supposed to get something fixed. So I don't know if he'll show up on time, but we'll see.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you just want to keep going for a few more minutes?
What else what do you want to cover? Anything else you want to cover?
So yeah, we were covering, like Crowley, and then I mentioned to you earlier talking about, I guess, focus a little bit more on music, and we were talking about Trent Reznor or Reznor.
Reznor.
Yeah, and his kind of the darkness with that.
Yeah, pretty dark. I mean, I featured his video that was done by a guy named Peter Christopherson, Broken, because the arc of that video fits the profile, or fits the exact kind of MO for what's known as the smiley face killings. A young guy out at night gets abducted and then drowned, either ritually or something. I don't know what they did with the body, but it's the same arc of that video.
And is that something you'd be willing to come on another time to talk about?
Sure.
Just the smiley face killers? I know that's a whole.
Absolutely.
That's a whole nother, and that's something I think that is very disturbing.
Super disturbing because
that was the first time I heard the 9 Inch Nails video, listening to you, and I was like, well, it can't be that bad. Then I found it, and I'm like, this is like a faux snuff film.
Right, exactly. I think,
and it was made in the 90s, and it's more disturbing than some of the stuff I've seen recently.
Yes, yeah, it's really disturbing. So, I featured like a still frame of that video on the cover of my film, Smiley Face Killer. So,
and did you ever hear the story about he was approached by the police investigating a murder?
Yes, yeah.
About they found the camera or something, yes. Yeah. But they tied it to a balloon to film, and there's all kinds of strangeness surrounding him.
Yes, absolutely.
And every interview, and as a normal person, you can watch, and I just try to watch interviews with these people.
Well, it's interesting because I think he recorded the downward spiral at the Sharon Tate house where she was murdered. So he was there. I think he was living at some correlation between him and Marilyn Manson. And there's just a whole one of his new bands, post 9 Inch Nails bands, references Peter Christopherson's poetry, How to Kill Angels. So yeah, there's a lot of strange things there, no question.
Yeah, and that was just it was shocking because I never really listened to 9 Inch Nails, but then once I really started like looking into like his body of work, I'm like, this is a disturbed guy.
Yeah, look at Happiness is Slavery is about bondage and S&M stuff.
Yeah, no, and it just I guess it's just one more thing, with Hollywood. And
no question. I don't think there's any question about that. You scratch the surface. It's all They're much more similar in mindset than you might believe. A lot of these people, it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And have you heard of this? Is a little off topic, but I saw an ad for it's like a sex club called Sanctum.
Yes, I've heard of that. I think that's the one. Wasn't like Bill Maher a member of it or something?
Yeah, yeah. And they're gonna have a show on Showtime, but it's an open sex club.
Yeah, but you got to pay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, but they're open about it. But I think it's like $75,000 a year.
Right, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just shocking to me because like
Did you see
I
Bill
guess
Maher's? Yeah.
picture of him.
Yeah. Did you see Bill Maher's tweet about him going to Epstein's Island?
No, no. What did he
Yeah.
say?
He said, "I'm going to be having in a much more profane way, having relations with a Russian prostitute after I get off, the plane at the island." So a lot of these guys know exactly what Epstein was up to. A lot of them are just not commenting or saying anything.
And that's the thing is like in normal life, like just a working class person. If I had a friend and I found out he was hanging out with like all the time that there was a pedophile down the street, molesting all the neighborhood kids, I would be like, you knew, like you had to know.
They had to know, absolutely.
Like and you can just tell, like
you would assume that they're all stupid, right? That's the only way they wouldn't know because Epstein's walking around with little kids all the time, 15, 14, 16-year-old girls. So
yeah, and I'm sorry. I mean, I in my own life, I've never ran across those type of people, but you can pick up pretty quickly when somebody's up to no good, when they're living a certain type of lifestyle.
Yeah, there's a massive cover-up taking place about Epstein, who knew Epstein, all that stuff, and all those people were nervous about Epstein testifying. So, but yeah, that story, yeah, there's a lot more going on for years, for decades of him up to no good. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it's just shocking because it seems like everything in the past 10 years is ramped up.
Yes, no, I totally agree. What's really scary is like I bet that there's a pedophile group, in politics and in Hollywood. They don't really know. And then Epstein pops up. Well, there it is. That's it. He was trafficking, and they're shaping the story to make it look like he was just a pedophile, like a rampant pedophile. That's part of the story. It's not all the story. This real story is the trafficking and selling of these kids, and that's what Virginia Roberts was talking about. Is she was trafficked and it was like a pyramid scheme where they would get one and one would get five and those five would get five.
Yeah, you'll move up the ladder the more you enslave underneath you.
Yeah, you get a slave, absolutely. So it's like a Nexium almost. There's similarities.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's what's concerning me is all the sexual stuff that's ramping up.
It's bad, man.
It's bad because it seems like to me that's the most degraded.
Yeah, and then you get into blackmail, espionage. You get there's a whole host of whole black box, Pandora's box of stuff Epstein was up to that some may not and probably should not make the light of day. So what the public knows is, if people think they know the whole story, I think that they're...
Yeah, and we never will. I mean, it's just...
Well, here's the thing. If you look at his flight logs, he's bouncing around between countries all the time. So if somebody's doing that, what other advantages is he taking? Is it just a sex operation? What else is he moving around? Drugs? What else could he be doing? How did he amass a fortune of $550 million?
Yeah, and that's it's just always the money is where it gets,
Yep.
You can attribute all these different things, but when somebody has a fortune and they're not, they're not Bill Gates, you're kind of like, well, where's this coming from? And they never explain it.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Bill Gates. He was on one of the flight logs of Epstein.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. It's just,
this guy's moving with superpower, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey Nick, I gotta wrap it up, man. We're at 50 minutes anyway, so.
Okay. So yeah, no, thank you, and just tell any of the listeners where they can find your books, documentaries, contact you, anything like that.
Yeah, all my books are on Amazon. William Ramsey. My 2 videos are on Vimeo, Vimeo. William Ramsey, Smiley Face Killers, and Occult Hollywood Volume 2, and I can be found on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay. All right.
All right, Nick. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Bye.